How do you think we got here, Brent?
Well, Abby, thanks. It's great to be here with you all. Texas is a great state, right? We have abundant natural resources. We have a great higher education system. We have reasonable regulatory climate, so that we have to continue to protect. And we've got a great tax structure for the most part. So when you take all of those things and you put it together, Abby, our elected leadership, really beginning with Rick Perry, Governor Perry, saw an opportunity to take all of those natural advantages we have and put some economic development force behind them and created the system of economic development incentives that we have today. And so those things combined have really caused the state to take off. I can tell you, as somebody that operates an international business, we work in about 50 countries, Texas is without question the best place to do business. It's the easiest place to do business. It has the most favorable regulatory climate, and although property taxes are too damn high, other than that, it's really a great place. And so when you think about it, what's happened is when you add all those natural resources and the abundance of our workforce, Commissioner Aaron Demerson mentioned yesterday the workforce and what a ready workforce we have here. So when you add all that together, Texas has kind of got to the point where it's like the flywheel that Jim Collins wrote about in his books. And so it just keeps getting better and better. And I would say that the thing we most need to worry about right now is not screwing it up.
Yeah. And everyone is fighting to keep good paying jobs across every state, right? Everywhere you go, you're reading about it. It continuously is a topic of conversation, particularly in the workforce, and keeping people employed, being aggressive. This whole return to office is still always in people's minds. What bills are in the next legislative session that are critical to us sustaining this growth, specifically in the state of Texas, Glenn?
Well, Abby, I want to first commend Ed Curtis and YTexas for putting on this terrific event, and I also want to congratulate our chair and Brint Ryan, who was awarded the Ambassador Award yesterday at the beautiful Ryan Club for all of his great work for the state. And I'll just say, the tax, regulatory, workforce, infrastructure, the airports, the incredible network in terms of our border crossings with Mexico. I mean, the one thing, and Abby, I guess I am one of those people because I can't make that same connection. I didn't have a child born here. But the one thing that I've learned very quickly about Texas, it's not a state, it's a country. And just the dynamism of the economy is awesome. And Brent hit on one thing that's really important. We just don't screw it up. And the one thing that could screw it up is the fact that we have a property tax incentive that will expire at the end of December. And it's the incentive that has been a driving force in a lot of the deals that have been covered by the great business journals around the state. So when you look at Samsung and TI and Tesla and some of these big ticket items, yes, no income tax is great. Yes, the light regulatory touch is great. But without the property tax abatement, it would have been very difficult to impossible to land these companies simply because of the amount of property taxes that they would pay. So the Texas Association of Businesses, working with great chambers and business groups around the state to make sure that for the next legislative session, priority one is getting a better tool on the books, because once we accomplish that, and we will, Texas will continue to be the best place in the world to do business.
So Glenn, you're absolutely right, and I'll tell you something that surprised me. We're not telling this story as good as we should, because I was with one of our state senators, long-serving state senator last week, and we were talking about Chapter 313 and its replacement, and this elected official was not aware of why Chapter 313 was enacted in the first place. Wasn't aware that we lost a major chip fabrication plant to Intel, to your former state in Arizona. And so I think when I explained it, look, we lost an opportunity that's now probably cost the state upwards of $50 billion in state economic development to the state of Arizona. And since that time, Intel has continued to invest heavily in the state of Arizona. Investment that started here in Fort Worth, almost happened in Fort Worth, and then didn't because of one reason: property taxes were too high.
Well, Brent, that's exactly right, is that the Intel facility, and yes, it's $50 billion, but it's not just $50 billion. You now also have TSMC, Taiwanese Semiconductor, that's putting in tens of billions of dollars, because once you start landing these types of high technology industries, whether it's semiconductors, auto manufacturers, or you name it, you tend to see a cluster. And I'll have to say this, Brent, it hurt a little bit when, and maybe it'll help us as well, where my colleague who now runs the Arizona Chamber wrote a piece for the Phoenix Business Journal popping off that Arizona doesn't have any temporary tax incentives when it comes to big ticket investment. And we're close to our locker room. I feel like I could say more colorful language, but I won't. But I want to wipe the grin off his face, and the way we do that is by getting a better tool on board. But Brent is right that we have to make a much more powerful case to our lawmakers. And they also need to understand that as great as all of these different things that Texas has, including the world's best barbecue, if you don't have something that reduces the high property taxes for capital-intensive investments, they're just going to go to another state. And we don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, the cost of losing just one of those deals is unacceptable.
Could be tens of billions of dollars.
That's right.
So sticking with that, compared to other states, how are the Texas incentives?
Well, so Abby, I think our incentive programs, our incentive stack, if you will, is properly sized for what we do in Texas and all the other advantages that we have. We don't have to match Oklahoma dollar for dollar. We don't have to match North Carolina for dollar. We've got other attributes that make up for that. So the incentive stack that we've had now in place for many years has worked very effectively. We need to do something about Chapter 313, and we need to have an adequate replacement. We need to make sure in this next session that the legislature fully funds the Texas Enterprise Fund. A lot of folks will say, well, we don't really need that. We're doing so well. The reality is, I would remind those folks in the pink building, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? They don't understand often that relocation's expensive. It costs money, and these programs help defray some of those relocation costs. It helps put you in a better position financially to be here. And as Glenn pointed out, once you're here, we kind of got you. But until then, we don't. We also have some unique programs that make up our incentive stack. The Texas Enterprise Zone program, which is often confused with the Texas Enterprise Fund program, it's also often missed, is a great jobs retention program. What it does is it allows you to designate up to 500 employees at your site, and you get a rebate for doing that. And a lot of people are like, well, why would we do that? Well, think about it. It's like insurance. I get calls all the time where we're thinking about, reducing our workforce. We're thinking about making some strategic cuts. Where do we have incentives? Well, in Texas, we've already got this designation. So they kind of take Texas off the list. Okay, what's next? And it's a really good program to keep high-paying jobs in the state of Texas. So I think we do have a really good incentive stack. I think it's appropriately sized. Now, it does have some challenges. It depends a lot on local support, which I think is good in some respects, but it sometimes causes us to be slow in responding to opportunities. Sometimes we appear a little bit disjointed, so there is some things that we can do to make that better. We're not dealing with an incentive program in a state where the governor can just say, this is what we're going to do, and you don't really have to deal with all the other constituencies. But by and large, I think we have a really good program in Texas, and I think it would be smart for our elected officials to support it and protect it.
Glenn?
And Abby, there's another component there's a perishability component. I think of the senior senator for Texas, John Cornyn. He was the lead author for the CHIPS semiconductor bill. So right now, there's a massive opportunity when it comes to even doing more in the state of Texas when it comes to chip production and the supply chains. And these investment decisions are being made right now. And while it's great that Samsung and TI are going to do some great things, we want to get the supply chains as well. And if we don't have a replacement tool, it's very likely that we're going to miss out on a number of these opportunities. And I'll also say, even on the energy side, Texas is the energy capital of the world. It's oil, it's gas. We also have twice as much wind as anyone else. And we'll soon have more solar. We have a ton of hydrogen. We have carbon capture going on. We have a ton going on. But the other piece of this is when you have on the federal side, and I think the Inflation Reduction Act was fraudulently named, but be that as it may, it has $369 billion in it for energy. And we should make sure that our Texas policies maximize the amount of new energy projects that are possible. Because while we may have competition from states like Arizona and Ohio for semiconductors, for a lot of the energy stuff, there's competition across the border in Louisiana.
Well, and Glenn, don't forget, one of the things that the pandemic laid bare is our dependence on other foreign countries for manufacturing of critical items and supplies, and our incentive stack also helps that reshoring effort. So it's necessary and appropriate for us to do strategic reshoring, and these programs help with that as well.
Great point.
So, Glenn, what do you say to people who don't think that corporate incentives should be used to grow the economy?
I say, please respectfully look at what's going on in the rest of the country, and including in red states. Look at what happened in Georgia with Rivian. Look at what happened in Ohio with Intel. And I'll say, in those states, you had elected officials, very conservative elected officials, not shy about saying that they were going to do what it took to get these next generation industries. Because again, just think about it. Texas is the energy capital. We export more semiconductors than any other state. If we can continue to lead in those two areas and then throw in what's going on with advanced autos, with companies like Tesla, Texas will be unstoppable. Right now, in my opinion, if we just simply don't do any harm and make sure we get a better 313 type tool in place, my personal prediction will be that by the middle of the century, we will have a higher GDP than California, and more people, and that would be good not just for Texas, but for the country.
Something I'd add to that, Abby. Whether you agree or disagree with economic development incentives, you have to realize that the worst possible thing you could do is unilaterally disarm, right? The other states and other countries that we compete with are not going to disarm. They're going to continue to double down. Many states already have better incentive programs. They offer higher dollars on incentives and relocation opportunities, and many foreign countries do as well. So, whether you like it or not, you can't unilaterally disarm, or we're going to really be hurt. We're really going to be in a situation where we miss big opportunities. And while Texas, I think, will still continue to be successful, if you looked at it pre and post, I think you'd see that we've lost a lot of economic opportunity, a lot of opportunity for the citizens of Texas, and frankly, that would be a shame.
Yeah, and I think when it's never a bad day. It may have been the Austin Business Journal where it was asked, well, there's this big rush for projects because of the expiration of 313, and in our opinion, it's never a bad day to announce $1 billion plus project. That's a good day. And I think part of it is that Texas has been winning for so long, is that perhaps, again, we have to do a better job of explaining to people why all that winning occurred. And you think about it, it's not a completely great connection, but you think of like NAFTA. which the support deteriorated for whatever reason, and then was replaced by USMCA that had broad bipartisan support because the business community came together with elected leaders of both parties and made the case. So I think this is one very clearly that if we do our job and make the case, good policy, better policy will follow.
So the state of Texas has many ways, you guys have touched on it a lot, to reduce the cost of doing business here. We know what the challenges are. For manufacturing, that's growing a ton, specifically around Austin. What are some of the programs that folks should explore?
Well, I think all of the things in our incentive stack you should think about. I'm biased, of course. I think when you're operating a business, you should consult experts in economic development. There's a lot of different programs. And it's one thing to simply have a list of the programs and kind of understand them. There is some art to how you put them together, how you combine them to get the best effect, how you make sure that all the applicable programs, both not just state but federal, that you're entitled to, that you get advantage of. And I hear, clients will tell me from time to time, they'll say, well, Brent, we're not really sure we agree with that program. We're not sure that from a public policy standpoint that's aligns with our values. I'm always quick to point out that while I understand that, and frankly, there can be some public policy arguments against things that we do, the reality is you paid in, right? Your tax dollars went to fund those programs, and frankly, I think you do your shareholders a disservice and your team members and employees a disservice if you don't make sure you're getting all of the resources necessary for your business to be successful. I do also think that one of the reasons we've been so successful in Texas is because we have a reasonable regulatory climate. Organizations like TLR have done so much to make it, to have a good legal climate. Tort reform has been a huge benefit to our state, and we have to protect those every session. And then this coming session, January 10th, we'll be defending again. But I think those are things that we need to really think about if we want to continue to see our economy grow, if we want to continue to see the Texas miracle, grow and succeed. Those are things that we definitely have to think about.
Yeah.
Glenn, anything to add?
Well, the regulatory piece is very important, and Brent's absolutely right. TLR has done a great job on the legal environment. And you think about our regulatory touch in energy production. If we had the federal administration's position, half of Europe would freeze this winter. So the regulatory side of things is a very, very important part of the equation. I think the other piece that we're really going to focus on is workforce. Just at the Ryan Club, we had Aaron Demerson and hundreds, commissioner of the Texas Workforce Commission, and hundreds of interns to talk about the Interns Unite program. There's a great discussion going on in the state with our community colleges. We have more Tier 1 universities than any other state. We have some of the greatest career and technical education programs in our high schools. So I believe one of the areas that we could all work together on in a bipartisan way is making sure that what we're teaching matches the jobs that our economy needs.
Yeah, I'll put in a plug for Roy Spence and his Make It movement. What a great idea to use the power of marketing to make, kids aware of what their opportunities are. Boy, I wish I'd had that when I was in school.
Same here.
I've heard a lot of that going on in conversations lately, and it's specifically talking about starting in high school, right? Like we all think internships, it's college, you're ready to enter the workforce, but you're too late at that point. And it's trying to get folks educated, parents educated on what's available to their students.
Well, it's even, and Roy Spence's effort, which we strongly support, it's even in the middle schools. Getting that information is to make the assumption that kids in 7th and 8th grade know what's out there. Mm-hmm. That's just not the right assumption. And when you connect all these great opportunities, because when I was a kid, I still think I have a scar from wood shop. So it was very limited, the careers you can do. But now with technology, it's incredible. And even, one sort of side story, when Senator Corden held the press conference on the passage of the CHIPS Act, I found it interesting. He didn't hold it at UT Austin, even though there was a great representative from UT Austin. He held it at Austin Community College because so many of these jobs are middle skill jobs. They're great careers, but if students don't know about them, they may not go down a path that would be very productive for themselves and their families.
So to kind of bring everything home, for growing businesses who are seeking incentives, walk us through how do you get started?
Well, there's a number of ways, Abby, that you can do that. You can certainly go to your local economic development corporation, if there is one in your community. You can interface with the Governor's Office of Economic Development and Tourism. They've got a great staff there. Or you can seek out an expert in economic development incentives. We do that along with many other companies. And regardless of which way you go, regardless of whether you start local or you go to the governor's office or you find an expert to help you, just do it, right? Mm-hmm. Because we see a lot of opportunities missed. When we're in the process of looking at projects or we're called in to work on a particular issue and we're like, wow, you got that, but you missed this, this, and this, and and sometimes it's too late to go pick those up. So recognize that all of your companies are paying into these programs. You're paying into the Treasury, you're paying into the IRS. So when there's opportunities that are available, I would definitely encourage you to seek them out and make sure that you've found all the opportunities that will help you. You're bringing those dollars back to your local location. You're bringing them back to help people in your town. And frankly, regardless of your public policy views on whether it's corporate welfare or not, the reality is it's money you paid in. You should get your fair share.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just echo what Brent was saying. Is the economic development community here, the chambers, the economic development organizations, Governor Abbott's office, they led by Adriana Cruz, they really do an excellent job of working together so that companies that are looking to expand or locate in the state can maximize their incentives. There have been a lot of different people who have approached me, and if I don't know the exact person in the locality, if I reach out to the governor's office, they'll make the right connection. So this is it may be a big state, but it's a very connected community when it comes to landing positions and growing jobs in our state.
Yeah, and it's a very business-friendly state, so they want to help, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you reach out, that's their mission. That's their job, is to help you figure out, how you can grow your business here, how you can relocate it all here, and how you can be successful here.
Keep it, retain it, grow it. So at this point, I think we're supposed to move into the locker room, but we're a little confused about that. So we're going to take charge and have Q&A done here, and then let y'all go and tour the locker room. That's right over here. It's actually pretty cool. So definitely be sure to take part in that. But I'll open it up for Q&A for these folks for a little bit.
There's some great selfie opportunities in the locker room, so don't miss out on that.
There's names, there's no jerseys or anything hanging, but it's pretty cool.
It is
way.
cool. It's the biggest locker room I've ever seen. So
there you go. Any questions? Yeah.
Well, touching on the corporate welfare term, so I know the common objection. I understand the competitiveness of Texas with other states, but you're a manufacturer who's been here 40 years, and you say you're using my tax dollars to bring in a company that's going to compete with me for labor and other resources. Where's my money? How do you respond to that?
Well, Jim, first of all, I'd say that if you're a manufacturer that's been in the state for 40 years, you have an opportunity for economic development as well. We have job retention programs like the Enterprise Zone program that I mentioned that you would probably qualify for. You should seek that out. If you're growing your employee base there, you may have an opportunity to qualify for the Enterprise Fund. And I think that when we're bringing more business to the state, that benefits all of us. And frankly, the bigger the economy, the more opportunities for your company. We all, in every industry, we have competition. And I'll tell you, while if I had my druthers, I'd eliminate it, the reality is it makes us all better. So when we have to compete, we're better. But I wouldn't look at it to say that this is just focused on new relocations. There's many programs that apply to businesses that have been in the state for many, many years.
Yeah.
Hi, so we represent the Austin Asian Chamber of Commerce, and when Abby asked the question about how do companies get started for economic incentives, and Ryan listed off a whole bunch of opportunities, I noticed you did not mention chambers of commerce. So how do you see chambers of commerce supporting economic development and economic incentives, and how can we support you in that?
Well, that's probably a big oversight on my part. As chair of the Texas Association of Business, we do have a fantastic chamber network, and we do work through chambers of commerce. And that, I think your question points out that there are just many ways that you can access these benefits and get started in the process. And Glenn, forever excuse me for
I hope
blundering that answer.
I hope I don't get fired because I should have brought this up.
You did actually bring it up. You did mention chambers, but chambers are a very important part of the overall economic development climate in Texas.
And Drew Sheberly from our office runs the Texas Chamber of Commerce Executives, and I want to thank, I know we've got friends from Cedar Park. Tony Moline does a great job, and Tony's been a great leader in helping to get other chambers engaged in big ticket items like the replacement tool for 313. So that I really appreciate that question, and we look forward to your involvement because we want to get 400 chambers across the state united to get a better program on the books next legislative session. So thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Could you touch a little bit more on the employee side? We said the employees living close to the employer, and then is there any other programs in place for housing on the multifamily side for companies that are coming in?
So I couldn't really, could you repeat the question? I couldn't hear that very well.
Like, are there any other programs going on for employees that are coming in on the multifamily side, renters that are coming in? So the housing market is what it is, but also there's a shortage of multifamily. So employees that are coming in have a hard time.
Where are they supposed to live? Yeah.
So I know that there are some bills that will be heading to this coming legislature to address some of those issues. I'm not sure that there's really anything specifically, at this time that would necessarily address housing at the state level.
I think you have a lot of different cities within Texas looking at this, and because the economy is doing so well, and that's why again you want to be careful about what you tinker with an economy that is performing at such a high level. I believe we have a $30 billion or so surplus, so I would expect some of that will wind up as property tax relief in some way that might be helpful for the issue you raised in terms of housing costs.
Anything else? Well,
I think they all want to
hold
hear.
on. There's one more. Sorry.
So what have been some of the challenges for some of the companies that have moved here, more specifically from California? Some of the things I'm reading are around healthcare costs being higher than what they expected. The others are more DEI issues not being quite what they were expecting. So can you address some of the challenges and how you are addressing some of those challenges or putting together programs?
So healthcare, DEI challenges for folks coming from California.
Look, if you come from California, New York, or Illinois, those three states are basket cases, policy-wise. I mean, no, seriously. I mean, I used to joke when I'm in Arizona, who's moving to Phoenix from LA for beachfront territory? They're moving there because they made very bad policy decisions. I'll say this, Texas is an extraordinarily welcoming place. This is somewhere where you can go as far as your talents will take you. And all of the evidence suggests that the momentum continues to happen in terms of people from those states moving to Texas. They're moving voluntarily. I mean, no one's being forced to come here. They're coming here for the opportunities. And I don't see many people, I mean, for U-Haul, it's all going one direction.
Yeah.
Can I ask
Yes,
one more question?
please.
So for the relocation expansion business to Texas, do you have a rough percentage, how many percentage of those companies are global expansion? And for the Texas-wise, are we more aggressively receiving them, and how can we be more ready for these global expansion?
Well, I think we are aggressively pursuing these opportunities. We have more opportunities for companies both inside the U.S. as well as outside the U.S. relocating to Texas than we've ever had before. It is a long list of very prominent companies that want to relocate here. So I think we are doing that. I don't know the exact percentage of which ones are international versus domestic, but what I do know is that it's a record number of companies, and they're all trying to get here.
I mean, you look at Samsung, you look at NXP, and I believe the First Lady of Texas has been out in Europe the last few days helping to recruit companies from some of the larger European companies. And actually,
because we have natural gas here.
We have natural gas. It definitely helps. And I just returned from a big conference in Mexico City, and I'll just say that the amount of enthusiasm from successful Mexican businesses and business people to come to Texas is off the charts. I mean, I almost couldn't get on the airplane because of all the business cards that I have. And that is a little bit of a difference. I'll tell my colleague in Arizona, the second I go over from Texas, I'm a lot smarter than I was when I was in Arizona, because people in business understand how functional the Texas economy is.
All right, well, I want to thank Brent and Glenn for being here. Thank you all for being here. Hopefully you go enjoy your day. We've got another panel with my colleague from Houston, Bob Charlet, at 1:30. And I believe it's right back here in this room. But other than that, please, so we don't get in trouble, go see the locker room so you can say you've done it. And enjoy the rest of your day. Safe travels home. Thanks.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you. Thank you.